For more, let's bring in Michael O'Hanlon. He's Brookings Institution Foreign Policy Program Director of Research. Michael, it's great to see you with just kind of a pulse check here on where you think we are in the war, how far along, how many more days. If some are even saying if we suspended the Jones Act for 60 days instead of 30, does that mean we see a risk of a more prolonged conflict?
Greetings. Well, that's a distinct possibility. Yeah, I think we're in the phase now where President Trump, as my colleague Tom Wright has said, is losing his ability to decide when this war ends. Maybe he's already lost it because, and maybe frankly, that was preordained as soon as Ayatollah Khamenei was killed, because once you had his son replace him, who's at least as hardline and who at that point had lost his sister, wife, and father to Israeli strikes in consortium with the United States, the idea that Iran was going to back down was pretty unlikely. And Iran now has recourse to sort of a maritime version of insurgency or asymmetric war, which plays to Iran's historical strengths. For 40 years, they've given us a lot of military trouble in the broader Middle East, starting with 1983 Beirut, Khobar Towers, the Iraq stabilization effort, where a lot of Iranian weapons killed American forces. They're good at this kind of warfare. They think they're good at it. And now the Strait of Hormuz shutdown is sort of a maritime equivalent. And they're going to see how it goes for a while, I think, before they desist or certainly do any deal on their nuclear program and so forth. So, yeah, I think we're now into a period of fundamental uncertainty and a likelihood of an extensive war. I'm not saying it's likely to last many months, but certainly my money would be on weeks, not days.
I don't know if you read the Al Jazeera piece making the rounds that basically argues the U.S. Israeli strategy against Iran is working. Here is why. And one of the things mentioned in there is precisely the succession. You know, my understanding, this goes back a decade or so, correct me where I'm wrong, in Shia Islam is you don't want a line of succession. That was part of the dispute with the Sunnis. And so by choosing a son instead of having the committee able to choose their next leader, that's actually a sign of weakness and not strength. And this is a regime that's kind of behaving as if it is anticipating its collapse, the way that there's this kind of decentralized plan to just spray, artillery around the Gulf and that kind of thing. What would you say to the idea that ultimately we may have more of an upper hand here than the consensus or than most of us can currently perceive?
Well, not being a scholar of Islam myself, I'm a little hesitant to disagree with the Al Jazeera analysis, except to say that this theocracy has spent 47 years entrenching itself into power. And fundamentally, it cares about power and about its vision of an Islamic republic that's a revolutionary state throughout the region, taking on the great Satan, taking on Israel, destabilizing neighbors it doesn't like. I think that agenda matters more to whoever's in power in Iran than whether or not some theoretical Islamic precept about avoiding dynastic succession kicks in. So count me as a skeptic on that argument at first blush, not claiming to have deep authority on the subject. And I just think that the allure of thinking that AI has now allowed us to find any and all Iranian leaders, wherever they may be, could be partly right, but count me in as a skeptic on that as well, because the top layers of the regime were always people that Israel was trying to track. And it's not so much, it's partly through AI, but it's also through, hacking closed circuit television cameras near the Ayatollah's house, things that were not necessarily rocket science. They were impressive. They took a lot of very good tradecraft in terms of human intelligence, but it was not some fancy new technology that's going to now be reproducible for every next leader in the Iranian theocracy, especially because Iran has militias that are not uniformed, that are not overly centralized, that have been preparing for a dispersed command and control for at least a year and probably much longer than that. Yeah. And so I'm afraid this regime is likely to survive.
And what do you make of the president's latest post? And again, he's kind of reiterating or reposting these calls for allies to join us in opening the Strait. And some analysts have suggested that it's going to be hard for us to guarantee the Strait is open unless we can put boots on the ground along the Iranian coast to make sure that, we've kind of cleared them from being able to disrupt its passage. Then the president says, I wonder what would happen if we, quote, finished off what's left of the Iranian terror state and let the countries that use it, we don't, be responsible for the so-called Strait. That would get some of our non-responsive allies in gear and fast.
Yeah, it's tempting to think that way, but I'm old enough to remember all the Iraq War debates and the early heady days where things seemed to be going well, and then the presumption that somehow the politics of that region would work to our favor because anything was better than Saddam. We've been through this kind of thinking before. I realize Mr. Trump is not threatening a ground invasion or occupation, but I don't really think that threatening chaos is that much of an improvement. There were people in the George W. Bush administration who sort of favored the chaos theory. Just go in with a light touch and get out. And maybe they feel vindicated in the aftermath. But President Bush and others thought that was not a very good option because chaos in Iraq or Iran doesn't really serve our interests either. I think the president would be well advised, myself, not that he takes my advice, to give the allies some time to come along on this one. They were not consulted on this war. And the idea that they're going to fall in the minute that Mr. Trump demands they do so is a little unrealistic. But I believe over time, they may want to help us because they do need the oil and gas themselves, and they are our ally. And they know that the Iranian regime that we attacked was not a good regime. So if we give some time for emotions to subside, for new strategic realities to set in, we may get some European and Japanese help. But I think it would be a mistake for Mr. Trump to push this too hard, too fast.